When you talk about that left foot on the brake analogy, which I thought was a really nice sort of crystallizing analogy, what are the most common things that we have our left foot on the brake with in terms of, are there fundamental things that you see most often that are kind of getting in the way of us reaching our optimal performance?
Yeah. You want to think about these in a couple of buckets. We call these stressors.
Yeah.
So the way that your body works at all times, in fact, I think this is one of the traits that separates human physiology from any other animal. We have a better ability to adapt and respond to our environment. That's the single thing your body is trying to do at all times, right? Pushing and pulling, it's always reading and sensing, trying to get to a certain place. Stressor comes in and it adjusts. Okay, great. That's a good thing. We categorize those stressors into two major areas, what we call visible stressors and then hidden stressors. Visible stressors are things you're doing that you are visible and aware of. So you went and worked out. You felt that. Great. That's a stressor. You drank alcohol. You felt that. You didn't sleep tonight. You feel these things, right? You can see them. You smoke cigarettes. Like you have all these things, your diet, your nutrition. So all those are analyzed from a perspective of there. What are the most common ones? Well, the obvious ones you've probably covered countless times, right? Don't drink alcohol in excess and don't drink, try to have quality water and sunlight. And honestly, like the 15-year-old health, like could probably tell you like, what are the 5 pillars of health? And like you would line those things up pretty well. Now, where things get more interesting in our stuff is the hidden stressors. So these are things that are putting equal or greater stress on your system, but you can't see or feel them. So this could be things like a vitamin or mineral insufficiency. No one wakes up and goes, oh man, like my vitamin D's low today. You don't see that. You don't feel that, right? Where like, man, I ate all you could eat pizza last night. Like I know why I feel this way because of that thing I did last night. If there is a pathogen, if there is something suppressing your immune system, if endocrine system is not happy with something going on, oxidative stress, something like that could be happening. A lot of times these can be falling into sleep as well. We've seen a number of times where people have a self-perceived, I sleep okay, I sleep pretty decent. And then we can actually run real true in-depth analysis and we can see huge, in fact, we've had multiple times where we've like very likely saved somebody's life because their self-perceived sleep was pretty good. And we were able to actually see like you're steps away from a heart attack. And in fact, we put them basically in a hospital within a few weeks. And we're told many times, like, you basically saved this guy's life. That's happened countless times. So there are things that are going on that are beyond your perception that we can see, whether it's through some of our molecular biomarkers, whether it's, again, our brain analysis, like a lot of the stuff that we can see. Other ones that are common are things like muscle strength, muscle performance. People don't realize how telling those can be over your overall physiological health, but you don't necessarily see them. A really easy example is most people are somewhat aware that grip strength is an incredibly important predictor of, in fact, there's a really cool paper. It's titled something like grip strength is an indispensable marker of aging. Something like that, right? Which is basically saying like you can't not pay attention to grip strength. And we've actually published a paper last year, and Tommy Wood from the University of Washington, neuroscientist, led this project. And we've got a couple of them going. But one of the things we found there is we can actually predict Alzheimer's and dementia risk via grip strength testing. And strongly, we actually have a project right now that we validated in the UK Biobank, which is 500,000 people or so. We validated it in the American equivalent, which is called NHANES. We can actually predict muscle quality from 4 blood markers. And we can also predict the risk of dementia as well from those 4 basic biomarkers. And those are also directly tied to grip strength. And so looking at things like that is saying, okay, you have some potential signs of either short-term or long-term physiological stress that's happening and you don't necessarily feel it yet because you're 35 or 45 and you don't feel super weak, but we're seeing these early signs. One other example of that, and I'll caution to say that there's only been one paper on this. So in science, that's a way of saying, yeah, we'll see. Okay, but just as one example, this paper came out last year and it showed that the asymmetry in your grip strength, so the difference in strength between your right and left hand, is actually an early predictor of neurological decline. And the reason is, think about this, in order for your muscles to contract, They have to be sent a signal from your central nervous system, your brain and brainstem. And if you're having significant asymmetries from one side to the other, and by this they meant over 10%. So if you have a grip strength of 40 kilos on the right hand, 10% of that would be 4 kilos. So if your left hand is 30 kilos, that's way more than 10% difference. That may be an early sign of early denervation of that left side. And so neurologically, potentially losing ground there. So just things like that are things we're able to detect. This is, hey, we're seeing things that are putting stress on your system, whether you realize that or not. And so they can be these molecular biomarkers, but they can also be other things that people just either don't have the technology or they don't know how to, or they're not aware that can give you tremendous insights into the overall stress. As scientifically we call this allostatic load or allostasis. But that's the marker we're after ultimately.
And in the case of grip strength, I find that so fascinating because I was reading about that in your work a while ago. That it could also be the case that I've just trained one side.
Totally.
It's
if you've trained one side, then then if you've only gone after one side, you've done either a sport or you have a lifestyle or an occupation that is really one side dependent. It could be as simple as.
But for the typical person, we tend to
Yeah.
be fairly even and asymmetrical. Symmetrical with our grip strength.
Yeah. Remember, these are population averages.
Sure. Right.
This is one study. It's, the individual person always means less to the individual person than it does to the